So I've got a lot of questions here from multiple different people about themselves or friends of theirs going through bouts of depression. And the questions usually revolve around what do I do to help myself in this state of depression? What do I do to help this friend who's in a state of depression? And also, Elliot, it seems as if you go through bouts of depression as well, which I'm always transparent with you guys about. How is it that you seem to move out of it so quickly and then almost seem to be stronger on the other end? A few people are asking this. Now, before I get started, let's make a clarification about what I'm describing when I talk about depression. Because there are some people who, I'm going to sound controversial when I say what I'm about to say, that have adopted the pharmaceutical and medical industry's definition of depression being something that is a lifelong holding that someone carries with them and they are now medically ill because of it. And they get to take all types of medication for many, many years. And they live with this personal identification with what should be a season in life. Depression is normal. It's normal to go through these bouts or these seasons where there is chaos and there's entropy. There's frustration, there's confusion, there's craziness in your life. It's happening intrinsically and extrinsically. You can personally identify with the circumstances and the feelings associated with that bout of depression and stay in it forever if you'd like, which will chemically change your body. You will change. You're right. Yes, there's a chemical imbalance. And you will probably now have to take medication to balance that out, especially if you don't deal with it holistically, recognizing the integratedness of the universe, yourself, your nervous system, your thoughts, the foods you eat, the behaviors you engage in, things of that nature, taking responsibility for it. Now, this is not a knock on anybody who has clinical depression. What I'd like to offer are ideas that support people who recognize these bouts of depression in their lives and in others, that want a bit of perspective on it, and perhaps a solution or an idea that might support them in not only dealing with the depression while you're in it, knowing how to handle it, but also recognizing that it's probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to you. And I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to use a few different, I'm going to read, essentially. I've got a few things, I don't do this very often. I'm going to read to you from two different ends of the thought spectrum. One is very poetic and religious, and the other will be very scientific and concrete, if you will, because even those words that are so-called scientific are also very abstract, if you will. We talk about a lot of things we don't actually see in science. But either way, the reason why I do this is because I find that both science and religion can offer you perspectives, depending on what you're most receptive to, as to the realities of your depression, the natural cycles that you experience in life, and why it's good for you to go through these cycles, because you will evolve, you grow. So the very first piece that I want to read is from Abdu'l-Baha, and he's one of the founders of the Baha'i religion, faith. He goes on to say that the mind and spirit of man advance when he's tried by suffering. The more ground is plowed, the better the seed will grow, the better the harvest will be. Just as the plow furrows the earth deeply, purifying it of weeds and thistles, so suffering and tribulation free man from the petty affairs of the worldly life until he arrives at a state of complete detachment. His attitude in this world will be that of divine happiness. Man is, so to speak, unripe. The heat of fire of suffering will mature him. Look back to the past times, and you will find that the greatest men have suffered the most. There are other passages by Abdu'l-Baha where he also uses the metaphor of fire and gold, where the purity of the gold is dependent on the heat of the fire. He also talks about a sailor who has seen very rough waters being a far greater sailor than one that has always been on easy waters. Very poetic, very religious, very metaphorical. But the idea is that there are things that we recognize in nature and in our extrinsic world that point to the reality. For the ground to produce strong fruit, strong trees, it needs to be dug up really deep. You need that pain, you need that suffering, you need that digging, you need that turning, you need that turmoil to get rid of all the impurities that allow the seed to grow to its fullest potential. If you just drop it on untoiled ground, the seed won't grow, or it won't grow very well. Do you understand? So very poetic. I'll read now something from the other end of the spectrum that might be helpful to other people who see the world from a more scientific light. All machines, in fact, must eventually break down, and scientists have confirmed that the law describing this energy exchange in a machine applies to all energies in the universe. This fact of nature is often found and spoke of as the law of increasing entropy. Entropy, simply put, is the measure of an amount of randomness or chaos in a system. And the law of increasing entropy is an expression of the fact that the universe is increasingly moving toward a state of increased disorder and randomness. Left to itself, with no energy input from the outside, an energy system will tend to break down and become increasingly disordered. A car will turn to rust and fall apart. A mountain will eventually be worn down, and so on. Even the expansion of the universe itself is a movement in a direction of increasing disorder, increasing entropy. Yet we can plainly see that many things in the universe tend towards increased order. The opposite of what is predicted by the second law of thermodynamics is that life itself has evolved as atoms became molecules, then amino acids, proteins, cells, multicellular life, social systems, and so on. Definitely a process of increasing order. And obviously against the flow of increasing entropy. How can this be? This seeming paradox puzzled scientists for over 100 years until Prigogine discovered the key, that order arises not in spite of entropy, but because of it. Part of what he's describing or alluding to is to the fact that there are dissipative structures in the universe. There are dissipative or open systems where human beings, for example, are an open system or a dissipative structure where we take in energy and we discharge energy, right? One of the most obvious examples of that is we eat food and we shit. We eat food, we shit. We inhale, we exhale, right? So we're a dissipative structure. We're taking in, we're dancing, we're an open system with the environment. We're not by ourselves, and the environment is not separate from us, right? So with that understanding that we're a dissipative structure, I want to go on. Oh, I even highlighted this. Prigogine called these open systems that evolve by taking in energy and matter from the environment and then dissipating the resulting entropy into their environment, dissipative structures. So that's what we are. Now, dissipative structures flourish in unstable, fluctuating environments by being plastic enough to handle the variations in changes in such environments. The more ordered a complex system is, the more entropy it must dissipate in order to maintain its existence. Conversely, each system has an upper limit due to the level of its complexity, of how much entropy it can dissipate. This is a key point. If the fluctuations from the environment increase beyond that limit, the system, unable to disperse enough entropy into its environment, begins to internally become more entropic or chaotic, right? It can't handle it, You can't handle what's happening in your environment. The world is changing, people are changing, your girlfriend dumped you, you have a lot of financial stress. So this is happening to the open system. If the excessive fluctuations continue, the chaos eventually becomes so great that the system begins to break down until finally a point is reached where the slightest nudge can bring the whole system grinding to a halt. Breakdown, right? This point, which Prigogine called the bifurcation point. Bifurcate means to divide into two branches. A decision point, a moment of truth. Either the system will totally break down and cease to exist as an organized system, or it will spontaneously reorder itself in an entirely new way. Incredibly, this reorganization is non-causal and non-linear with what went before. It is in no way predictable from prior conditions. Only the probability of a certain outcome can be determined. The change is a true quantum leap, a death and a rebirth. And the main characteristic of the new system is that it has a capability to handle the fluctuations, the input from the environment that cause the initial overwhelm and eventually breakdown of the old system. You break down and then you build up stronger. Do you see? This is what happens with open systems. Either it completely breaks down and it dies, right? Which most people, the depression leads to death to a degree. Or it grows stronger. It reorganizes at a higher level. In Prigoggine's words, the system escapes to a higher order. Out of chaos comes a new order, a more evolved system. The new system has a stability and is able to move easily, easily exist in the previously overwhelming high fluctuation environment, but the fluctuations increase again to a level beyond the system's new and higher capability for dispersion of entropy. The process will repeat. This just keeps fucking happening, resulting in new internal chaos and other reorganization at a new and yet more evolved level. I fucking hate reading to the camera, but I thought this was important for you guys to hear. So you can see that the mystics and the philosophers, you see that the religions and the science all point to one reality when it comes to entropy, depression, frustration, anxiety, pain, disillusion. It's just a natural part of the process of becoming a stronger version of yourself. It happens to us spiritually, and it happens in the world physically. So my point here is to show you multiple different ways to see how depression is not only normal, it's essential, and be grateful for it because it allows you to reorder yourself at a higher level. Every time I experience a bout of depression, I come out on the other end a different person, doing different things. But it's because I'm aware of what's happening and I'm aware. I want to see the opportunities as they present themselves to me instead of falling into the depths of a spiral down depression because I'm personally identified with what is happening when I'm upset. And this is what I invite you to try and experience. Do not latch on to your depression. Do not personally identify with your depression. See it as you see winter, and winter always leads to spring and summer again. See it as you see nighttime. Nighttime becomes daytime again. See it as you see the breaking down and the building up of your body, catabolic, anabolic. It is a process that's natural for spiritual evolution and physical evolution in the world. I'm done.